Okay, today we're going to do a little video on how to open up a Whirlwind MASS Connector to replace a damaged pin or socket. Alright, the first thing you're going to need to do is to remove this jam nut that's on the Kellum's strain relief. To loosen it, you turn it counterclockwise. And that will spin off. You can just slide it back out of the way. And you're going to take the Kellum's grip, give it a little wiggle, get your fingers up here. That will slide back like the Chinese finger torture device. Now on cables that have been assembled and in the field for a longer period of time, the rubber grommet that you can see here will usually be wedged in much tighter and harder to come out. To remove that after it's been in the field for quite a while, a small screwdriver inserted between the aluminum part of the grip and the grommet a little bit, and you just give a small prying motion, will loosen it up and allow you to remove that and slide that back out of the way. I like to do those 3 steps before I take the cap off the connector, just to make sure, depending on what your work area is, nothing else bangs into the pins or sockets. At that point in time, you loosen the cap. Kind of drop that back out of the way. The locking ring, you will back that off. To the point where the entire insert ring is exposed. On new units, you can see that there's a date code on it. Older ones, that ends up usually getting wore off after a period of time. There is a small entry hole here which fits a wrench that we have here at the factory that is not quite available yet, but that's possibly in the future. What you can use is a 2mm Allen wrench to rest it in there, and it kind of gives you a little something to get a grip on. And then you can actually twist the housing. Hold the insert still and twist the housing. If you start to twist the insert, you can do more damage to the wires inside than you're already trying to repair to begin with. It's a little bit of a dancing game to keep the cap going around with you. You can just take the screw out if you like to remove the cap so it's out of the way. Okay, once you have that loose, you can lose the Allen wrench and slide this back. Now, we at the factory assemble it with electrical tape and what we call Tommy tape. Underneath is the Tommy tape, over the top is the electrical tape. You're going to need to remove that. You can do it by just simply unwrapping it, or very, very carefully using a razor blade. You don't want to put too much pressure down it, as you do not want to cut into any of the foil on the individual channels of the connector, or cable, excuse me. Okay, and there you have it. We have that out of the way. You can see the individual channels. Now this happens to be a cable that there's actually nothing wrong with it. But we're going to just grab a pin and a socket to remove it. Now a socket, you can't like push on it with your finger like you can a pin to remove it, so you have to have something that will insert inside the socket itself. A paper clip works well, or a replacement pin that you're going to be using to put it back together with, and a socket you'll be using if you're ever changing a pin. So I'm just going to pick one out here on the end, which is easy to get at. I'm going to put the paper clip into the socket. Now, the insertion removal tool has 2 different ends. In the experience that I've gone through, the white extraction tool only works well if there's no wire terminated into the connector. So what you're going to want to do is just use the red piece. You locate the socket that you want to remove, and you'll put this around it and push it in carefully. Takes a little finessing and a little patience. feel it seat into the hole and bottom out. It goes in a little over 1/8 of an inch. Now with some pressure on the paper clip, gently twist the red insertion tool back and forth. Sometimes you have to push it back in, push back and forth, give it a little, work it back and forth a little bit to get it to let go. And after you do this a few times, the insert retaining clip will let go of the socket, allowing you to push it out. And there you have it. Now again, this is a perfectly good socket. There's nothing wrong with it. However, I am going to cut it off and put a new one on just so you can see how it's done. There is a crimp mark from where the tool crimped it. You actually want to cut the wire right over top the socket. So you're not cutting it behind the socket, you're cutting actually right where that crimp is to try to retain as much length as possible. Okay, now that you've cut the pin or socket off, I've already stripped this, but you're going to use a pair of 24 gauge strippers, strip off approximately 3/16 of an inch of the jacket to prepare for crimping on your new pin or socket. The Daniels tool is available from Whirlwind. You are going to drop the socket or pin down into the receiver. I usually give it a couple clicks before it actually starts to crimp so it won't fall out. I didn't give it enough crimps. There you go. And then it's a little hard to see at times, and it might not be that great to see in the video, where you want to line up the wire with the socket, insert it into there, and then crimp. It will release automatically. After that, you will locate the hole that you took it out of, start it by hand. It will go in quite easy since it's already been inserted once, and then use the tool to push it in the final way, the rest of the way. After you've done that, the insertion tool comes out. Sometimes, there's a trick about this too, is that the insertion tool will not always let go of it and want to pull it back out with it. You can use a small pair of needle nose pliers to use a little pressure on the back side of it to get it to go in. And you actually, 99% of the time, will hear a very small click when you know it's locked in. After you've done that, get your paper clip again, test it to make sure it doesn't push out, and it has not pushed out. Mission complete. You've replaced a pin or socket. Now, pins or sockets that are further into the inside of the connector can obviously be much harder to get at, which will require you to probably unload much of the connector one at a time to get to the broken one, then reload it one at a time back in. And that's how it's done. After you've done all that, you can wrap it again with tape. It just helps keep it from getting tore up. Slide this back up, tighten it down as far as you can. I didn't bring tape with me, so I can't really do that right now. And slide the grommet up. Slide the Kellum's grip back up. Tighten down the jam nut. Once this is all in and tight, you're good to go. Mission complete. I hope this helped. Thank you.